Hi everyone. Let me know if you're here, when you can see and hear me. I do have my chat up today. Usually I don't because I'm outside or something, and I just have my camera with me. I'm super nervous. So welcome to this live session. I will be channeling from my soul stream in a moment. So if you're new here, I'm Leanna. I'm a channeler connected to the Divine Mother energies, and I have a very strong embodied connection with what I call my temple of being. And when I channel, it's more embodied. So I usually am going downward to my own soul's memory unless I'm channeling the Divine Mothers, and their frequency is always present. And today we're channeling about severing of harmonic union. But before that, I like to tell you what I know because I don't like to rely on channeling as a mask. I don't like to tell you that channeling is something you should believe more than your own soul's being. And like I said, I'm very nervous. But why am I so nervous? I'm very nervous because of the personal part of it. So I'll be telling you my personal memories, which maybe, I don't want to say contradict, they complement, but they may be hard for people to perceive as truth. But it's part of my soul's purpose to share it publicly in order to restore what was severed. And it's like one of those things where, you worry people are going to perceive you, and then they're going to place blame on you, like Eve or Lilith, even though it's not that extreme. It's just how I feel in this moment. And so if you've been watching my videos, you know I do grid work with the Sophia crystalline grid. I work with the womb of return, which allows you to be more deeply embodied, to bring your soul's gifts down through the body and root it. And that's what I also work with in the grid. And my work complements Matthias DeStefano's work with the planetary network. And so if you haven't watched any of my videos before, that's what I've been working through, explaining that connection, how I knew that was part of my soul's purpose to become and embody. And then to talk about memory versus consciousness, and memory is more related to the lived experience, is more related to what you embody. But there's personal memory, and then there's also collective memory. And collective memory I see it's more operational. It comes from the grid, it comes from the earth field, it's archetypal, it's cosmic. It tells you where we as human beings are at with our evolution. And then there's personal memory or soul memory, which you may access through the body or through your consciousness. And when it's arriving as it should be aligned with your soul's purpose and what you are to embody and become. So sometimes when you have past life regressions or you start to remember, sometimes you'll be shown archetypal energies, or sometimes you'll see lives of roles or figures that many people see, especially around Atlantis, especially around religious persecution and woundings. And it doesn't always mean that you lived those lives. You're usually shown that when you're grounded enough, anchored enough not to over-identify with them. But it's to show you a lesson that you need to learn, or you need to have a perspective on. And now there are you as a soul. In your oversoul field, there may be many versions of you incarnated at one time. And even souls who maybe are closely connected to your oversoul stream, meaning they're not from the same oversoul, but maybe they're from like a neighboring one, and someone is incarnating who hasn't had many lives in the third dimensional earth frequency. You may share memories with them so that they can learn, but they should be more about understanding their humanness and the level of consciousness and evolution that they're here to embody. Now, when some people go through their awakening or accessing, they blow past certain boundaries and start to access memories or downloads or information that's not necessarily connected to what they're here to embody or to their purpose, which isn't necessarily wrong unless it starts to lead to inflation or psychosis or confusion or deter them from their own purpose. But I'm just sharing that this does happen, and memory in our earth field is very complicated. And it's a web. However, with archetypal energies, or with their archetypal energies or figures, names, things that are used to teach people, there's always an origin frequency. And so that's why sometimes I talk about going back to memory of origin, what was actually the embodied experience, instead of maybe what's gone into the web of memory through stories or through different access points that maybe got distorted by a filter of perception. And then so my personal knowings, which have come through recently, but I've suspected I knew for several months. So I talk about the womb of return, and I talk about knowing that my mission aligns with the I Am path and the planetary network. And the Atlantis life, where Matthias remembers getting assigned that mission, that I've also seen that as well. Not through his perspective, to be clear. But I've seen it from multiple perspectives. The first one was I've mentioned before that I wasn't allowed to access everything all at once because it would be too big. The first one that I accessed was of a child, a perspective of a child. That wasn't my origin. Okay, for some reason my camera just stopped. If I'm back, let me know, and I'll continue. I think I'm back. Okay, so I was talking about seeing that from a perspective of a child. And now I've met or known many versions of me. Thank you for telling me that I'm back. I've met many versions of my soul stream. I've met many people who carry archetypal energies that are similar to mine. And I've met many different people who've seen lives of figures in different ways. So I'm very understanding of this. And then, because of the connection, I started to figure out who I actually was, started to know in more of an embodied sense, but not be able to access the memories, because the memories were shared with someone else. And this goes into what was severed. So, if you watch some of my other videos, you also may be familiar with Ahumhatet, who was a priestess during the collapse of Atlantis, very young in my first memories of her, who had a very strong connection to Lemurian culture through her twin brother and a telepathic connection, who when she went to a mystery school or programming school, her brother ran away to Lemurian colonies, where she lived, collapsed and fell, and she ended up in a survival colony on the west coast of what's now Africa. She didn't stay there very long. She worked with the Codex. And then she moved to her next part to carry the womb of return. And she ended up for a very long, very, very long time along the Nile. At the womb where it could be anchored and left. At a physical manifestation of the trine of return. And I'm sort of channeling this right now because it's coming into me. And she lived there for several hundred years. And if you've heard other things, you know some people lived much longer back then. And I was very surprised. I try to justify when I saw her there, this was not the memory, the perspective I accessed it from. But when I saw her there, her energy was a very old woman along the Nile, beneath the pyramid. I was like, is she quantum leap? Is she quantumly coming through like she did for me? Is it a reincarnation of Ahumhatet? And it was no, it's the same one. And so Ahumhatet seeded the womb of return. The origin frequency of the womb of return lies with me, not that other people can't access it, don't remember, don't know how to work with their womb spaces in the same way. But the perspective that I access the memory from, the perspective of the person or the embodiment of who was assigned this mission is, of course, obviously, very connected to the person Matthias remembers being. And I don't know much of how he shares the story. I don't know much of his perspective, or even the person who he resonates with as this person. Because he has identified them. Which is who he calls Sobek, who was his partner in that life, who was a male. And in those memories of Sobek that I accessed, which is very few because I've just been allowed to call back those memories to me, was called by Ahumhatet. It was Ahumhatet calling to herself. As Sobek, in the middle of the night, beneath the pyramids, where she offered him the choice, which was to sever and return, to restore time and memory that had been broken, to mirror the severance that was going to occur in union, to learn, hide, and protect the womb of return, to separate from not only external union, but union of self. So that soul, Sobek, severed in other incarnations out to play multiple roles in the journey, to be the protector, to be the guardian, to be the lover, to be the priestess, and to be the villain in some cases. And he chose that. He kept it a secret. He carried it, and it gave him much pain because he had promised already his partner that he would not let her fail. And it caused him much pain in that life. And so the other things that I've known since recovering some of those memories, calling them back to myself, is alchemizing overlays, or harmonics that distort union. Projections of equal resonance. As well as like guardian protective overlays on me. And I've heard other people who work with attachments, with overlays, talk about seeing these in a different way. For me, it was the energy of a black widow. Has nothing to do with the cannibalism aspect. You know, in nature, they're not actually that cannibalistic. But it has to do with their secretive nature, with their hiding nature, and wish their inability to come into coherence because they're very messy. Their webs are not woven well. They're very chaotic. But it's hiding in the shadow, hiding in the chaos to protect yourself. The other one, which I suspect is very common, especially for people in the higher consciousness space, is that of a praying mantis. Funny enough, also known to be cannibalistic. Not as cannibalistic in the nature as they tell ya, but has nothing to do with that. Did you know mantis, the word mantis means prophet? So it's praying prophet. And the energy of this overlay is withholding, suppressing desire, suppressing the primordial self, the instinctual self, and the harmonic union as service. Now let me just see if there's anything else I need to share before I go deeper. So like I explained before about archetypal energies, Sobek is an archetypal harmonic of protection, of guardianship, and of holding. But there is also an origin frequency of that. And I know my guides want me to say that I'm the origin frequency, but I don't think I can say that for other people. I think it's something you have to resonate with for yourself. And I will say, in the union space, and people who have industrialized divine union and sacred union, and I know that is something that I speak mostly internal union is the foundation for. And I much prefer the term sovereign union, meeting in your own wholeness, not having expectations on how the union is going to take shape, because you're confident in your self-love and in your own love of self. There is a lot of sacred union teachers or guides. Some of them, I feel like, understand this, but they have turned in order to market themselves, in order to get people there. They've preyed on the desire for connection. So you'll see in the spiritual spaces, at least in the small business realm, the most popular niches are money and love. And so everyone has to start somewhere. But I don't know what the answer is to this, to not making sovereign union a gimmick. But I will say, just like everything else that we've separated from, everything that's severed, like unity consciousness, the coherence between mind, heart, and body, like the calendar, which, is coming up now because of the intersection of timelines. They go through octaves. They go through octaves to get to a return. So even with union, like I said, separating out and playing all the roles for yourself, that is not harmonic union. So, in my opinion, what we define as a twin flame is not harmonic union. That is a mirror coming to shake you and wake you up and to experience greater evolution. Now, many people mistake even twin flames for karmic relationships because you feel them so strongly. And those karmic relationships may be both a karmic relationship and what we describe as a twin flame, another half of your soul. So we go through octaves, the soulmate, the twin flame, the crazy karmic relationship, in order to come back to harmonic union. Now, what is harmonic union? It's something that was severed because Earth's frequency, Earth's matrix could not support the alignment of the source creation harmonic between two individuals. So the octaves downshifted in order to come back and return, in order to gently raise the frequency of the field, of your field, of Earth's field. And then, like everything else that was designed, then there's always forces who fear the change. So they want to keep it the way that it is. They want to slow down the progression. They want to tell you it's this and that, or you need, security and money, and your union should look like this, and your marriage should look like this. And so things take a little longer than they should. But harmonic union is a very powerful alignment. a very powerful creative force. So like my womb is very powerful. A very powerful bridge between spirit and matter, between the cosmos and your physical reality, not just for giving birth to children, but for creating in your reality, working energetically, healing, working with the grid. A harmonic union forms a bridge between the womb of return. It is a shared altar when it's sovereign, not controlled. So that's one of the reasons that's so powerful. Thank you, Keith, for saying that. Okay. See if I'll channel now. We can bring through what is needed to supplement how this has arrived in the collective field. We will shift frequencies from Sobek to Ahumhatet, anchored in the presence of the Divine Mothers and the soul field and frequency. Ahumhatet would like to share that the womb of return through this field hid knowledge of awakening, of creating, of valuing your system as whole. It's carried through the harmonics of Lemuria and before. Carried through before distortion. So that's what we say when we say an origin frequency. It was before it was corrupted. It was before it was separated, before it shifted and changed. It is how the harmonics of the body sing forward. How they sing out, how they connect with the grid, how they repair the song of the all. And how did we arrive here? Sobek shares. You left codes. We chose harmonic union in a time of shifting in a time of collapse. A sovereign union of wholeness that could not be carried forward in the same way because we had to invert the field. We had to mirror the collective. The trajectory of this separation looks different than it does for me. Harmonic union offers we'll come back to that. Harmonic union had to sever, like she said, because the field did not need it to stabilize the frequency. The womb of return, the separation of body from heart, the separation of your full power of self was hidden as the earth separated out from it herself. And as she inverted her own field, as her own field was taken off axis, and the healing, the restoration began. You needed to experience the self, the soul, in a different way. You needed to come back to who you truly are. You needed to awaken to the heart, to the body, to the mind. Everything fragmented and fell. And they had to be returned slowly, softly, in your own timing. And some of you experience this in different ways. Some of you need different things. Some of you have been with your harmonic partner, but not in a way that was in true alignment, not in a way that was fully received in wholeness, in creation, and through the access points of source, of flame, of light, and of truth. And so you go through, in some lives, intense situations, intense partnerships of growth, of development, of learning. And sometimes you have beautiful lives of peace, of co-creation with a partner that feels harmonic, that feels aligned, but it is only a fraction of what you can truly experience when the harmonics, when the frequency restores. When you return to an understanding of the body and how creation, how source moves through you. And so why was this chosen through us? Because when this understanding was hidden, was suppressed, we knew, we saw, how any inkling of it would be suppressed, would be hated, would be tortured or distorted. We saw how any awakening of it before could cause harm. And so it was hidden, it was protected, it was shadowed. And in some cases, it was vilified. And so, as it returns, as people understand their true creative power of anchoring both poles of the deep waters and of the bright sky, as they understand that they are both a conduit for light and what you perceive as dark, for matter, for the unseen, for the veiled. And how this creates in your world and it becomes safer for it to rise in the right environments, in the right conditions, in the right self. You awaken to your own heart, to your own womb, to your own true self. and the return of harmonic union externally with a mirrored soul, not always of your soul field. And by mirrored soul, we mean someone who embodies equal, opposite poles in energy, and through which your field is connected in a dynamic expression of purpose, of alignment, of heart and body. And yes, some of genetics that allow you to amplify, to create, to move the field around you. And it creates light. It can create energy. That feels quite different to what many of you experience. It is solid, it is foundational, it is unwavering. And yes, you may have intense moments, but it is stable. It's not distorted. And sometimes it's not dramatic. Most times we would say it's not. And many of you have not felt this before, maybe, in a life, in this density, or maybe have not anchored in the memory of it. But the density of it is not the same. It's much lighter. It's much freer. It flows and moves with you when aligned, when accepted and offered in return. So, why did we want to speak this here? It's a restoration of this one's field and of the collective field as it returns in the energy and activates the return of harmonic union, greater availability, greater opportunities, and things shift. Those who have been perceiving this maybe for a while, who have been working on or come into their own unity of self and their own sovereignty, may have been feeling this call for a while, or have perhaps been an early finder of it to lead the return. But it opens an activation in the grid to restore this harmonic and to perceive it in this way. And it's a promise fulfilled. And just from this one's oversoul field, breathe into your heart, into your belly, and into your feet. And allow what needs to return through you to be provided. And thank you for being here. Okay. I'd love to know how that landed for you. Thank you for being here, and thanks to everyone who maybe watches this at a later time. Thank you, Natalie and Keith. Let's see. And may we welcome the return of true harmonic union. I'll see you next time. If you liked this video, please like it or share it, and I'll see you next time.